Hello and welcome to Global Eye. I'm Parikshit. Luthra, multiple bilaterals, a Quad summit, a possible meeting with Donald Trump and an address to the Indian diaspora. Prime Minister Modi, who flies down to the US for a 3-day visit, has a packed schedule ahead of him. His first stop, Delaware, the venue of the Quad summit, which will be attended by President Biden and leaders of Japan and Australia. Modi will also be paying a visit to Biden's family residence in the state, regional stability in the Indo-Pacific, ongoing conflicts in Ukraine and Gaza, emerging critical technology, and a few of the issues that may be discussed at the Quad meeting. The group may also take stock of China's growing influence. Prime Minister Modi will also be engaging in bilateral talks with his Australian, Japanese, and US counterparts. From Delaware, the Prime Minister will fly down to New York. He's scheduled to address the General Assembly at the United Nations. An interaction with the Indian diaspora is also on the cards. That's not all. Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump claimed last week that he will be meeting Modi and called him a fantastic man, even as he criticized India for abusing trade ties. However, there has been no official confirmation from the Ministry of External Affairs on any such meeting so far. Joining us right now to take this forward are Tanvi Madan, Senior Fellow at Brookings Institution, and Michael Kugelman, Director at the South Asia Institute at the Wilson Center. Thank you very much for joining us. Tanvi Madan, if I can begin with you, what's the big win that President Biden, this is going to be his last Quad meeting, in fact, possibly his last set of foreign engagements as well, a farewell Quad summit, so to say. What do you think will be the win that Joe Biden is looking out of this visit?
I think he is seeking to consolidate the achievements of his administration when it comes to both the India relationship, but also the Quad, which was restarted during the Trump administration. But you've really seen it progress pretty significantly during the Biden administration as part of a broader investment in minilateralism, as it's called here, or coalitions or plurilaterals, as it's called in India. Here it's called the lattice work or the network of alliances and partnerships. So I think President Biden will want to consolidate that, but also set it up for the future of both the bilateral relationship as well as for the Quad to succeed in the future. So for him, if you look back at where what the concerns were, what the questions were during the transition period from Trump to Biden, there were questions in India about what a Biden administration would portend. The Biden administration has been pretty transformational, particularly in the defense, security, and technology sectors for the U.S.-India relationship, but also for the Quad. And I think he'll be seeking to highlight that while also set it up for the future.
Right. Michael Kugelman, when the Quad meets, do you get a sense that China, countering China, is going to be the big priority for all the 4 countries and also for Prime Minister Modi and President Biden in that bilateral meeting as well?
Right. Well, as you know, the Quad leaders and the Quad countries always like to depict the Quad as a positive thing, something that is meant to create opportunities, alternative options for the countries of the Indo-Pacific, particularly in terms of investment options or opportunities to access public goods, that type of thing. But we know that this is all very much about countering China, and that's what the Quad has always been about. It's been very unusual to hear leaders of the Quad countries explicitly refer to China in public remarks about the Quad. But my sense is that the perception, particularly in Washington, is that the increasingly provocative and aggressive activities of China and several other competitors of the U.S. in the Indo-Pacific region suggest that we might hear more from the Quad leaders about China in an explicit sense, in a public sense, compared to what has been the case in the past. But again, it's very notable that you have this ongoing theme of Quad countries wanting to emphasize how this entity is about providing, disseminating public goods, clean technologies, investments, public health assistance throughout the region in order to counter what China is doing. Only what China is doing tends not to be highlighted in the public remarks by Quad leaders.
Right. Tanvi, Madan, just to build on what Michael is saying, countering the larger threat from China, what has happened in the last few weeks? We've seen security of supply agreement being signed between India and the US in the defense sector. There was a collaboration that was announced by the US State Department with the Indian government to explore investments and semiconductor manufacturing in India as part of the CHIPS Act in the United States. So how do you expect US and India to build on that ISET partnership, the technology partnership? Will this also be a priority for the US considering that they're heading into elections?
I think you're seeing a lot of movement across these various sectors where you're seeing at the working level things that have been negotiated, they're finally getting signed. Now, part of it is this is not the last big engagement there'll be before for the US and India. There will be a 2+2. There was just an intersessional, which is the working level meeting before the ministerial. So I think you will continue to see, in fact, this relationship chug along. And that's actually normal for a relationship as it matures, where, yes, the the prime ministerial level is important, but you're seeing continued movement across these various sectors. And hopefully will continue regardless of who wins the election. And in some ways, the fact that President Biden himself is not on the ballot actually gives the two sides more space to get some of these things done because the staff on this side, the working level staff on this side, actually can devote the time to, including the president's staff, can devote the time to actually locking up some of these achievements in these spaces. So I expect whether you see what you've seen in the last few years, you'll see them try to continue that momentum and get some of the deals, some of the agreements signed over the next few months. And as you said, they're not just these agreements. As we speak, over just the last week, you've seen every one of the Indian military services essentially exercise with the US military, whether it's Yuddhabhyas that's going on in India right now, whether it is India and the US and Australia and Japan exercising on the sidelines of the Kakadu exercise in Australia. And then, of course, the US Air Force participating in Tarang Shakti, which India hosted. So you've seen how much the relationship has changed. And I think they'll try to get a few more things done before the end of the year. Every president since Bill Clinton has said that they have left a US-India relationship better than they found it. And I think we'll see that that's the case in the Biden administration as well.
Right. Michael, here in the Foreign Office, when the Foreign Secretary was addressing the media, there was a lot of interest whether India is going to come up with some sort of peace proposal in the United States or whether Prime Minister will speak of a peace proposal during the Summit of the Future. Do you expect that to come up in the discussions with President Biden, maybe Kamala Harris, maybe Donald Trump as well?
You mean a peace proposal in the context of Ukraine? Is that what you're referring to?
Correct. Correct.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is significant that Prime Minister Modi has been in both Russia and Ukraine in recent weeks. That's something that not many other world leaders, if any, can say. And I would think that at the least during the Quad meeting, that Modi will be asked to talk about his visits, and perhaps there'll be some interest in hearing him out as to what he would hope to do to try to create conditions for peace. Or a peace negotiation. But I don't think we should overstate this idea. One could talk about how Prime Minister Modi might be well positioned to play the role of someone that could bring the sides to the table, so to speak, because of a special relationship with Russia and because of a good relationship with Ukraine. But I think this may be putting the cart before the horse in the sense that it doesn't seem like the belligerents are in the mood to sit down for talks and to try to end this war. But I do think that we can expect that Ukraine and the war in Ukraine will be discussed at the Quad summit, and that there'll be a lot of interest in just hearing from Modi as to what exactly he experienced in both Russia and Ukraine. But of course, as we all know, this war is one of the few things that the four Quad countries do not see eye to eye on, just because India has a very different position from the other three Quad countries. So I don't think that we should overstate what exactly could come out of this summit, this Quad summit, vis-a-vis the Russia-Ukraine issue, just because there is that disconnect. And I imagine that in the joint statement that comes out later after the summit, we might see some references to concerns about the humanitarian situation, wanting to provide humanitarian support. That's what we've seen in the past. I don't expect anything different this time around.
Right. Tanvi, what do you think when it comes to Summit of the Future, which will be the Prime Minister's last event and address in the United States? Do you expect Ukraine to figure prominently? And does the US feel that India can play a role as a mediator?
The Summit for the Future, the idea behind that is, I think the big case that India will make there is for, kind of more proportional representation in the multilateral domain, in the international order. This is a moment for India to highlight that, it's one of the largest countries in the world with the largest population in the world, with an economy that's its size and a military its size. That you do see, and a country that is now an aid donor, not an aid recipient, that it does not have a voice at the UN Security Council. So the Summit for the Future is partly, yes, about the future, about issues, like climate change, but it is essentially, when the idea was, it was about reformed multilateralism. And I think part of the case that will be made implicitly or explicitly is that if the multilateral organization doesn't reform to accommodate not just India, but other voices, the concerns of the global South, and that includes thinking about, bring it back to your point about Russia-Ukraine, that the Russian invasion of the Ukraine and the war that followed has affected countries in different ways, including in the global South, and those voices need to be heard, and those concerns need to be factored in. And so I do think what you might hear is a reiteration, perhaps, of the Prime Minister's call that this is not an era of war. And keep in mind, there's not just the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The Israel-Gaza conflict continues as well. And I suspect you will find more people at the UN exercised with that right now than Russia-Ukraine. But just on Russia-Ukraine and kind of mediation. I think, in this era of instant gratification, we expect that there'll be a headline out of every kind of meeting, that will have instant results. Peacemaking, trying to get, conflict resolution or management or de-escalation is a painstaking process. India did this during the Korean War in the 50s. This takes a lot of back and forth. It's a lot of behind the scenes. It's a lot of meeting different parties. But as Michael said, you can prepare the ground for it, but both the belligerents and particularly in this case, you're going to see, you have a situation where President Putin doesn't even think that he should sit down with President Zelensky as Prime Minister, as Modi has called for him to do. So part of this is, it's a lot of back and forth. I wouldn't also underestimate the role that India is playing. The US has welcomed it, but at the same time said that, they want, the way that India and the US put it in joint statement, a just and durable peace, which means it's also not throwing Ukraine under the bus and just accepting Russian annexation of the territory that Ukraine has claimed and India has recognized as part of Ukrainian territory. So this is going to be painstaking. We're not going to hear a lot publicly, because the moment you go too public, that discretion is very important in these processes, in these negotiations. So I think it's good that India is trying. But I also think as a public, we should accept that we're not going to hear the TikTok of this on every day. We'll hear about it when the sides are ready to talk about it.
Right. Of course, the media is always impatient, isn't it, Tanvi? And these are things which take a long time in geopolitics. Michael, let me put that final question to you. And this would be regarding the possible meeting between Prime Minister Modi and Donald Trump, and Prime Minister's meeting with Kamala Harris. The Ministry of External Affairs has neither confirmed nor denied these meetings, but one is given to understand that if he meets Donald Trump, he will meet Kamala Harris. If he meets Kamala Harris, he meets Donald Trump. What will be the importance, the significance of these meetings, according to you?
I figured this question would come up at some point. I think that there are some risks for Prime Minister Modi if he actually were to meet with Trump. Now, who knows if this meeting is even planned? But if he were to meet with Trump but not meet with Harris, that would certainly generate a number of perceptions that he is favoring one candidate over the other. And I don't think that he or his government would want those perceptions to be out there. But it would be very significant. It would be very unusual, for sure, for a foreign leader to meet with two top presidential candidates, particularly less than 2 months before the election. It would certainly be a questionable thing to do. It would be a risky thing to do. But all I would say on this is we really don't know what's going on, what's going to happen. Certainly, there could be opportunities for there to be a meeting, given that Trump always has good reason to be in New York, and Modi will, of course, be in New York during this very short trip to the U.S. So there would be opportunities to set up a brief meeting. But again, it would be very unusual. It would be, I think, in terms of how it's perceived by many, there are a lot of risks there if Modi were to only meet with Trump and not with Harris. But let's see how things play out. The whole thing is a bit unusual, and I think that one has to take with some grains of salt Trump's original comment that he will be meeting with Modi this coming week. But let's see. It would certainly make for some interesting theater, among other things.
Right. Donald Trump has also said that India is the biggest abuser of trade relations, so we can't forget that as well. But Tanvi, Madan, Michael Kugelman, always a pleasure to have you here on CNBC-TV18 and Global Eye. And this is a story that we'll continue tracking all weekend. Prime Minister Modi's visit to the United States and the bilateral agenda on the table. We're heading into a break at this point, but coming up, Gerard, Mestrallet, French President's envoy for the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, arrived in India for an effort to take forward the project. A special conversation with him on the other side.
An economic corridor, a link of connectivity between India, the Middle East, and Europe, with 3 legs. The first leg between India
Welcome back. You are watching Global Eye. The ambitious India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor was announced in September last year. The signatories include India, US, UAE, Saudi Arabia, France, Germany, Italy, and the European Union. India and France are at the entry and end points of this shipping route. France is the first signatory country of the project to have officially appointed a dedicated special envoy, Gerard Mestrallet, who visited India for the second time and visited the Mundra port to follow up on progress made with respect to the infrastructure development needed for this corridor. I caught up with him earlier and began by asking him about the progress on the project.
The project aims at creating an economic corridor, a link of connectivity between India, the Middle East, and Europe, with 3 legs. The first leg between India and the Arabic continent on the southeast, which is a maritime leg. The second leg, which is territorial, terrestrial leg between the southeast of the Arabic continent and Haifa, crossing over Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Israel. And the third leg, a maritime leg from Haifa to Europe and to Marseille, which is the point of exit to all Western Europe. So it's a very, very important project in order to increase and boost the connectivity by the transport of goods, of energy, of green hydrogen, and also digital data through cables.
Right.
So far, there has been bilateral talks between us and other countries, including, by the way, the European Union. This project, which is a main project, which will be one of the most important infrastructure projects of the 21st century. This project is covering all the criteria to become a strategic project, a flagship project for the Global Gateway strategic initiative from the EU.
You are looking to have a connection between the endpoint of the IMEEC, which is the Marseille port, and also the Mundra port, which is a starting point. You visited the Mundra port in Gujarat recently. What were you trying to understand there, and what has been your message and conversation with stakeholders there, also the Adani Group, which operates the Mundra port?
Yes, of course. You are right to mention, that's very important, that the Mundra port and Marseille in France are the two ends of the corridor. So France and India are playing a key role in this project. Not only, of course, because they are the two ends of the project, but also because Prime Minister Modi and Mr. Macron were at the origin of the project. They have had talks in New Delhi during the G20, when President Macron has been invited as a special guest for the Republic Day on the 26th of January this year. IMEEC was also at the agenda, and the two chief of states have been talking about IMEEC and strongly pushing for that. So France and India are very key, and clearly Mundra port are the key advantages by its size, by its position, by its management, and there is also in the Mundra port a special economic zone with lots of activities, including manufacturing activities for green energy, solar panels, and wind equipments.
By when could all the countries involved be on one page and begin activating work on construction of the IMEEC corridor?
There is no, at this time, precise time frame for the project. In any case, we have to know and to realize that it is one of the major infrastructure in the world for the 21st century. Therefore, it will take first time, and it will be built for the century. Such a project requires lots of pre-project studies, pre-feasibility studies, market studies, and we are in this period.
What's the economic opportunity that emerges from the IMEEC corridor? If we were to ask you, for businesses in India and in France, the construction of this project, the initiation of this project, what kind of investments could it really bring to the table?
Well, there are a wide range of sectors which will have the opportunity to participate to the IMEEC, and therefore IMEEC will have a tremendous economic impact on both countries and the business. I can mention, of course, the construction companies to build infrastructures in India, in the ports, in the hinterland. Also railways to carry the goods to the port. It will be the same for in the terrestrial leg in Arabic continent for the railway construction, but also for the trains construction. And we have lots of French companies, very among the world leaders in this sector. So construction companies, shipping companies, port management companies, but also energy companies, because as you know, green hydrogen will be a priority for IMEEC, and I know that India has huge ambitions, and probably to be one of the most important producer of green hydrogen in the world, if not the leader.
For all the countries to put in money, investments into getting this corridor going, any ballpark figure you feel that would be required to make this corridor a reality?
No, there is no, at this stage of the studies, not a figure to put on the table. Have read a figure of $500 billion US, but I cannot check absolutely precisely this figure. But it's clear that it will be huge, and it will be important for the construction. But once the corridor will be built, it will be important for all the sectors, which will benefit from the exchanges in both directions, from India to Europe and from Europe to India. And so all the sectors having goods, services to be exported from their own country to the other one